This clip is now going viral because he says he supports reparations.
Do you support reparations? And would you legislate for an anti-Black crime bill?
Thank you.
What?
Restoration, repairing past harms is part of my faith tradition. It's part of the values I was raised with. And it's exactly why we need a lot of the policies we've been talking about here to invest in Black communities, to invest in Black Texans, whether it's tuition relief, whether it's home ownership grants, whether it is baby bonds to ensure that we are helping to build that generational wealth. We have to correct the injustices of our past.
Let's just grant his argument. We need to make the sins of the past right. The only thing that America should do if they're going to do anything for the Black community is to provide an incentive for the Black community to prioritize marriage and having kids. That's it. That's the single point of failure for what happened with Black culture. Men are no longer in the home. Women don't respect the men. Women are more masculine than they've ever been. That's the problem with Black culture, not what the government's doing. So if we do want to provide some type of relief, let's do it. Let's provide an incentive. Hey, I'll give you one. If you get married and then you have a kid, you don't have to pay any taxes for 2 years. You have another kid, we'll extend it for another 2 years. You have another kid, we'll extend it for another 2 years. No taxes. You still will be responsible for paying for property taxes and sales tax in your local city. But as far as income tax at the state level or the federal level, doesn't exist. Let's incentivize people to get married. Let's not incentivize victimization. That's what he's doing. So we're going to punish people who had nothing to do with slavery and reward people who had nothing to do with slavery. Make it make sense.
At a recent book event in D.C., unemployed gas bag Jim Acosta was asked some really tough questions, like, while covering Trump rallies, did you ever feel unsafe?
Did you ever feel unsafe? Did you ever feel like your life was in danger?
Yeah, I mean, it was totally crazy. Trump would go into these events, and there would be 10,000 people, 20,000 people, and he would whip everybody up into a frenzy, not only against people like Hillary Clinton, but against us. He called us the disgusting news media, the dishonest news media, liars, scum, and it would get so heated that we would have his supporters coming up to us in our press cage, as we lovingly called it, because they put bike racks around us to protect us. They would call us traitor and everything else, and they would be screaming at us as we were racing off to our cars after the events were over. So, and all of that has stayed kind of baked into our politics ever since that time. And I guess that's the other part of this, is how do we drain that poison out of our politics?
Wow. He found the heckling terrifying. Come on, somebody throw this big girl a snot-covered hanky so he can dry her tears. People have said worse things to me when I bulldozed that senior center. But as always, Acosta loves to paint himself as a lonely, courageous reporter seeking truth in the face of danger. But actually, he only pretends he was in danger. Jim, let me break it to you. You were no intrepid journalist. You were CNN. You weren't standing outside the system. You were the system. And now you cry about being harassed by the people you and your network smeared and lied to for years. You helped create and amplify the poison in politics you now whine about. The fact that he doesn't realize that shows you he's as thick as a shamrock shake. Fact, the right doesn't attack journalists. That's an Antifa thing. And nothing MAGA ever said resulted in harm done to the media other than to their egos. However, after the media painted big fat targets on people like you and me, many of us got hunted. Besides, Jim, you were just a lousy reporter. Remember this golden oldie about the wall from 2019?
As we're walking along here, we're not seeing any kind of imminent danger. There are no migrants trying to rush toward this fence. Behind me along this highway, there's a gas station, Burger King, and so on. But no sign of the national emergency that the president has been talking about. As a matter of fact, it's pretty tranquil down here.
Well, Jim, that's how walls work. See, They didn't simply cover the Trump years, they participated in them. They weren't referees, they were players, and dirty ones at that. For years, they told half the country they were racist, fascist, white supremacists, threats to democracy, insurrectionists, deplorables, you know, Nazis, but without that Holocaust stuff. True, even today, we're still being compared to Hitler by a party that would have elected a guy with a Nazi tattoo. Then they seem genuinely baffled that their targets don't like them. Jim says Trump turned his supporters against the press. No, Trump voiced the frustrations of people you've been painting as villains every single night on CNN. There's only so many times you can tell a plumber that he's the greatest threat to Western civilization till he decides he's no longer putting up with your Guys like Acosta talk as if they had no power, but no, the media had enormous power. They decided which stories mattered, which stories mysteriously disappeared into the Bermuda Triangle of the nightly news. Hunter Biden's laptop, Russian disinfo. Joe Biden's decline, cheap fakes. Inflation, actually good. The border, under control. The summer of love, mostly peaceful. The COVID lab leak, a racist lie. Leah Thomas, a woman. Jim Acosta, a man. They got every story wrong, then wondered why trust in them collapsed like a boner at a Madonna concert. I know. And that's not because Trump hypnotized America. It's because he exposed the sham. Now, Acosta still talks like he's one of the biggest names in journalism, but really, he's the biggest ass seated at the kids' table. And it's quite a table. Olbermann, Chris Cuomo, John Harwood, Don Lemon, Geraldo, Katie Couric, Brian Stelter, Chris Wallace, Mehdi Hassan, Joy Reid. It's a who's who of who cares. Although Stelter has returned as a media analyst, but that's only because he's blackmailing CNN with naked pictures of himself. Couric still lurks around, but her colonoscopy already told us she's full of But these hacks still pop up at small events, probably because they're stops on their paper route. Hell, if you needed help sealing your driveway, Don Lemon's available for $50 and a tuna sandwich. You need a lift to the airport? Keith Olbermann will drive you in his car if he isn't sleeping in it. So when Jim asks, how do we drain the poison out of our politics? Oh, I don't know. Maybe watching you and all these assholes getting tossed from your jobs is a good start.
You support not just the populist right, but the far right. In fact, very fringe parties in some countries.
No, I support the normal people.
Okay.
What do you call the far right? Falsely.
You think as the normal person. Okay.
Yes. Literally, you could go back 10 or 15 years, and these policies were completely normal. In fact, one of the tricks that I think is funny. One thing that's quite funny is to like take a speech from Obama and Hillary, and then go to someone and say, who's sort of on the sort of what I call the lunatic left, and say, what do you think of the speech by Trump? Like, oh wow, he's the worst person ever. Actually, that was a speech by Obama, or actually, that was a speech by Hillary.
I agree. No, I agree that the center of gravity in this country has shifted. Certainly, the Democratic Party has shifted to the left. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people like Rupert Lowe. I'm talking
right,
about
please.
people.
It's actually just normal people. It's just normal people. It's just normal people. And and here are the principles. And tell me which of these sound terrible. That we should have secure borders. That we should have safe cities. That we should have sensible spending. Which of those three are far right fringe? And I would like to just admonish you and the media for the absurd characterization of the far right. It is false and misleading and nonsense. Please keep this part in.
We'll keep all of this in, but let me
Don't cut this part.
Let me push back on that. Let me push back on that
because
you have
nonsense.
Elon, you have what is it? Close to 250 million followers on X.
Yeah, because
you say things like
popular guy.
So we should go over this disruptions thing because if we want to ban somebody in the future, like to actually take them out, you have to point out and specifically say who's being banned.
We're going to say it to her, so we can't do that. Can't. So I spent my first 6 months going into this. I wanted to give people like probation, like you can't come.
what have you done that warrants you taking this money that will protect local?
Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Patriot TV. I'm your host, JD Rucker. We're going to be talking about lots of news clips, some news articles, and just getting ready for the weekend, right? Am I right? Now, for those of you who've watched my show before, you know the weekends aren't really weekends for me, but I know they're weekends for many of you, and praise God for that. We all need a day or two of rest, or at least one day of rest. The other day, you should probably still be doing something productive. Maybe get some yard work in. It's a good time. If you are blessed enough to even have a yard. Big news out of New Hampshire. We're going to start right off the bat with bad news. I guess, in one way, it's bad news, okay? Because it does, at this very super exceedingly early stage of the 2028 election season, which hasn't even begun yet because we're still in midterms. But they are starting to like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New Hampshire. There was a Fox News clip, which is fine. I'm including it instead of just doing the actual statement by AOC, who clearly knew about this, and she was super giddy and super excited, but she tried to act humble. Good for her to at least try to act. But at the end, Kaylee McEnany said what I believe is true, which is that yes, AOC is definitely running.
This normally would be this would be the first primary, but the Democrats haven't even decided where their first primary is. I don't even think New Hampshire's in contention to be the first primary.
Did you see Kamala Harris in that list, guys?
By the bottom.
She's fallen, even though she's been topping polls nationally. But look, it's early. You're right, though. Nevada will probably be the first, or South Carolina. We'll see. There's a lot of way to go. But I think that what you can glean from all polling is that the Democrats have a socialism problem. You see that in the primary candidates winning. You see that in the polling. And if there's a socialism ideological problem, who does that mean prevails in a primary where it's only Democrats voting? It means someone like AOC, someone like Bernie Sanders, someone from that wing.
Did we get reaction from AOC about topping the poll?
We did. She was pretty thrilled about it.
Hit play.
There was a UNH poll that came out that had you surging in 2028. When you see that, what do you think?
I feel very, humbled by the support of everyday people. I think that, polls go up, polls go down. That's kind of part of how all of this works.
Why do you think yours are going up right now?
You'd have to ask folks in New Hampshire. You'd have to ask them.
But does that change how you think about your future?
I think when I make decisions about my life, they aren't just rooted in polls. They're rooted in what people need, what is best for the country, and what is appropriate for the moment. And I think that right now, the most important thing before the country right now is for Democrats to win the midterm elections. That's why I have put the energy that I have put into it.
She's got two options: Senate, New York, because Schumer's a dead leader walking, or the presidency. The problem is, Kaylee, and you know it, she's on the national stage twice, and she failed epically. She does not have any idea where the other countries are located.
Brian, she's going to run for president for sure. I mean, look at her fundraising. Yes, she's in the top.
She's running. And again, I said it's sort of good news, sort of bad news. Bad news is because obviously of all of the potential candidates, I would rather have Kamala than AOC as president of the United States. God forbid in either direction. But yeah, so there's that. That's the bad news. But the good news is I think it would be fun. I'm just saying. I think it'd be fun to run against her, regardless of who it is. Marco, J.D. Vance, DeSantis, whoever. Throw them at it. It would be a very lit. Do they say that? Do the kids still say that? It'd be fat. PHAT. No, they definitely don't say that. I don't know what they say anymore, but it'll be pretty crazy. Let's go to Molly Hemingway. Let's actually go to two clips, and I want you guys to decide which is the bigger threat. Is it the Department of Education? Big threat. Marxist organization. Is it the American Bar Association? lots of challenges there. I don't know. They both seem to be very dangerous.
No other institution in America has caused as much damage as the teachers' unions over the last 50 years. What they have done to education is horrific. And part of it is that they are so politically biased. I mean, they're one of the biggest arms of the Democratic Party. They run many of their get out the vote campaigns and are just a major funder of the Democratic Party. But people should be right to be concerned about AI algorithmic bias. To add to what Emily said, all those AI algorithms have been trained on left-wing ideology, not right-wing, left-wing, contrary to what AFT was trying to say there. And so they will be trained on newspapers like the New York Times or the Washington Post as they put out just crazy propaganda about the Russia collusion hoax or COVID or the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. And then that just gets infected and builds. And so that bias is something that people on the right should care about. That the Democrats and that the AFT teachers unions think it's not left-wing enough is terrifying, actually.
Wild.
My mistake. I said Department of Education. I did mean teachers union. I knew. Of course I knew. Why wouldn't I know? No, I screwed that one up. Yes, the teachers unions, extremely dangerous, extremely damaging, and they're getting worse. Even under President Trump, they are unfortunately getting worse. Not that they're getting more power. They are actually losing some power. Praise God for that. But they are becoming more dangerous every day because they're lurching further and further and further and further away from not only education, but sanity as well. So there is that. But I don't think it's even a question. They are more dangerous than the ABA. With that said, I told you I'd give you guys the option. You choose, but choice pretty clear. Affecting the minds of kids still more important than affecting the who gets accreditation. Now, with that said, I'm not trying to downplay that having a woke ABA. That's pretty bad as well.
Thank you, Chairman Gill, Ranking Member Simon, members of the committee for this opportunity to testify before you today. The American Bar Association has abandoned its mission to provide best practices for the legal profession. Instead, it has opted to push a partisan program full of radical policies. For example, the ABA has weighed in on hot-button cultural issues by supporting nationwide abortion and racial discrimination at American universities. It has opposed Second Amendment rights and has attacked states that refuse to let children cut off their genitals if they feel they were born in the wrong body. Even more egregiously, for an organization supposedly dedicated to the rule of law, it has taken the absurd and patently incorrect position that our Constitution has 28 instead of 27 amendments. This position that the Equal Rights Amendment has become part of our Constitution is so egregious that even the Biden-appointed Archivist of the United States, the official that certifies newly enacted constitutional amendments, rejected it out of hand. As a private organization, the ABA is free to adopt almost any policy it wishes, but the federal government recognizes the ABA's Council of the Section of Legal Education and Admissions to the Bar as the sole federally recognized law school accreditor. And when this entity, which is nominally under the auspices of the ABA, exercises government-sanctioned authority, it must comport with the Constitution. But it doesn't. In fact, as current President Michelle Benke made clear in a February 2026 speech, the ABA will not abandon its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion because now is not the time to take back the progress that we have made. And she delivered introductory remarks at the ABA's 2026 Equity Summit, which the ABA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Center hosted in coordination with the ABA's DEI Advisory Council. The summit included panels with titles like Disparate Impact Liability and Old Innovation That Remains Advantageous, Beyond Rainbow Logos Centering LGBTQ+ Voices Who Fuel Innovation, Equity, and Better Lawyering, and Professional Conduct in a Fractured Climate, Model Rule 8.4G, DEI Challenges, and Ethical Lawyering. Now, for those unfamiliar with the ABA's Model Rule 8.4G, it's a chilling speech code put forward by the ABA under the guise of policing the professionalism of lawyers. But it has drawn condemnation from across the political spectrum. And one Pennsylvania federal court found that Pennsylvania's version of this professional conduct rule, which was based on the ABA's model, was unconstitutional, though that case was later dismissed for other reasons. While the council is supposed to be nominally independent from the larger ABA, there are very real reasons to question just how independent the council really is, given the co-branding and Byzantine relationship between the two entities. Even setting aside that overlap, the council itself has taken a number of controversial actions, including targeting law schools such as George Mason or St. Thomas for not implementing its radical DEI and other progressive policies aggressively enough. Now that it's facing an existential crisis and the loss of its monopoly on law school accreditation, the council seeks to back away from some of its most egregious positions. Consider, as we heard, that it now seeks to repeal Accreditation Standard 206, which requires law schools to demonstrate by concrete action a commitment to diversity and inclusion, which it interpreted as requiring law schools to treat students, faculty, and staff differently based on their race. But the council isn't making this move having reevaluated its position or even after having reevaluated the proper role of an accreditor. It's making this move out of crass self-preservation. When it perceived the political winds to be blowing in a different direction several years ago, the council demanded that law schools comply with Standard 206 even if constitutional or statutory provisions required otherwise. In other words, the council said its rules trump the Constitution. That's shocking. So what's to be done? First, Congress and the executive branch should build on the good work that has been done and eliminate the ABA as the sole law school accreditor. Congress should update relevant statutory provisions to prohibit the recognition of any accreditor that imposes DEI requirements, and Congress should build on the work of states that have eliminated the ABA as the gatekeeper to state bar exams. If other states continue to rely solely on the ABA for this function, Congress should strip those states of relevant federal funds. As Justice John Marshall Harlan had the foresight and fortitude to make clear 130 years ago, our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens. But the ABA has been using its accrediting authority to undermine these constitutional commitments to equal treatment regardless of race. In closing, the federal government and states must continue to take actions to end the ABA's monopolistic status as a law school accreditor. Thank you.
This next clip is from Fox News. It's about the rent freeze in New York City. It's about the landlords suing the city over this rent freeze, suing Zohran Mamdani, and their claim that the process wasn't properly handled, basically that it was rigged, that he made it to where he engaged in fiat dictatorship style declarations and that the proper process was not followed. And that's the boring part. It's easy to get into the emotional side of things. It's easy to say, oh, but these poor landlords, they're struggling already, or oh my gosh, it's been demonstrated time and again that when you freeze rents, when you have rent-stabilized apartments and too many of them, the people that are in there, they get the benefit, but then the rest of the people suffer. I get it. There's a lot at play here. But I want you to listen mostly for the boring part, I guess you could say. The question, not of whether rent freezes are working, not whether or not the landlords are poor or the tenants are poor or who's poor. I want you to focus on the process because according to Fox News and according to the attorneys for the landlords, they're saying that it appears that the system itself was rigged to get the result that Zohran Mamdani had promised. This was something that he's supposed to be able to get because he promised it in his campaign, and therefore, that's the claim, is that because he made that promise, he compelled the board to not look at the facts. And that is where this case hinges. That's everything. We don't need to worry about whether or not it makes sense, whether or not it's a good idea, who's suffering more or less, or anything like that. This is about was the law broken? Was the system subverted? So pay attention to that. Put the emotions aside, at least for now.
Looking to overturn the city's newly approved 2-year rent freeze on roughly 1 million rent-stabilized apartments. They argue that Mayor Zohran Mamdani improperly influenced the Rent Guidelines Board to deliver on a campaign promise. Let's bring in now Randy Mastro, attorney for the landlords suing Mayor Mamdani. Welcome to you, sir. Good to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
So what's the case the landlords are making?
Well, it's a simple proposition. An independent board, statutorily required to weigh all the evidence and fairly consider the data, instead perverted the process at the mayor's behest to deliver on his campaign promise. This was a sham process to deliver a predetermined outcome that the mayor directed by fiat. That is blatantly illegal, and the ramifications of it are profound. More than 1 million New Yorkers live in rent-stabilized apartments. That's thousands of landlords, many of them struggling to survive because we are living in a period of inflation rising, the costs of landlords soaring, taxes, utilities, insurance. Yet somehow this board, under the mayor's influence, came to the conclusion that 0 rent increase was warranted. Not supported by the data. Board did not properly consider the statutory criteria, and we believe it will be found to be illegal. And don't just take my word for it. A longtime board member quit the morning of the vote because she refused to be part of a sham process where she said the outcome was dictated first and then the data manipulated to reach that result. When have you ever heard of a government official resigning on the day of a vote and then in such stark terms calling out the illegality? It's remarkable. It's unprecedented. That's why this case cries out for relief.
But Randy, you know, New York City's own DSA co-chair was joined to Martha McCallum last week. He made the case that New York City landlords are just getting fat off the backs of rent payers. Take a listen to their interaction.
Landlords in New York have been making a 12% return on their investment on average.
How much should they make? What's fair for the landlord to make if you don't like 12?
They're complaining that 12 is not enough. And we don't think that anyone should have a constitutional right to double-digit returns on their investment. That's why we've implemented...
No one should have a right to a double-digit return on their investment.
No one has a right. That's not... No,
what are you talking
no
about?
One's in that. That's not in the Constitution.
Oh, dear.
Okay. Well, insanity. The fact of the matter is we're talking here about a particular group of landlords who have rent-stabilized apartments. Those apartments are not making huge profits. Many of those landlords are underwater. In the Bronx, all of the rent-stabilized apartment owners, they lost money last year. That's the board's own data. This is apocryphal to say that landlords of rent-stabilized apartments are living large. They are barely surviving, so many of them. Yet this board didn't take into account their rising costs and their declining income. In fact, the board manipulated its own data to intentionally understate the costs for landlords and to overstate the income of landlords. And let me explain just briefly how that happened. Utilities going up. The board said, oh no, we predict they will go down next year. July 1, the Mamdani administration raised water utility rates 6%. And on income, they didn't calculate the income of landlords on rent-stabilized apartments. If a landlord had one rent-stabilized unit in a building and the rest were market rate, the board credited any income on any of those apartments, even the ones that are market rate. That is just sophistry. That is not a real assessment of how poorly landlords are doing in these difficult times. And to give those landlords no rent increase whatsoever for 2 years, landlords who are hurting throughout our city, that's just unconscionable.
So you're going to win?
Bring it on.
Okay.
We've got to win because this, for the sake of our local democracy, a mayor cannot abuse his power in this way and take an independent board and make it his puppet. And for the sake of our city, where there has to be fair and balanced policy, the law has to be followed, and struggling landlords have to be recognized as needing some increase, We have to win.
Got it. We will be watching to see what happens. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. So right now we're awaiting.
Oh, we've got some breaking news. Breaking news right here on Patriot TV. This just in. Democrats in California like to cheat. Okay, so maybe that's not exactly breaking news, and maybe it's not really news at all. It's just more of the same, because we already know that Democrats in California like to cheat. As a matter of fact, it's not that they like, it's not enough they cheat. They contort the system in a way that makes cheating legal. Oh, they don't like the risk. They don't want to get caught cheating, so they game the system. They rig it, just like Attorney General Rob Bonta, who's now doing everything he can to just subtly adjust the verbiage of the voter ID ballot initiative. He's adjusting it in a way that I would argue this may be enough to prevent something that 80% of the people, even in California, 80% of the people want it, but they might not get it because this Attorney General scumbag is trying to rig the game.
Are considering a lawsuit against the state's Democratic Attorney General. They say Rob Bonta has rewritten a ballot description for a voter ID initiative in a way designed to sway voters. Senior national correspondent William Lajeunesse takes a look from Los Angeles.
This initiative will now appear on the November 2026 ballot.
More than 1 million Californians signed petitions putting voter ID on the ballot. But what voters see and what they signed are different.
It is to make people confused and to work and undermine the election process.
Supporters say State Attorney General Rob Bonta stacked the deck against them. Here's why. The original title for Prop 39 said it establishes additional voter identification and citizenship verification requirements. Tuesday, the Attorney General changed it to prohibits citizens from voting unless they present government-issued identification.
He is framing this as prohibits citizens from voting for a reason. He is framing this in the language in summary now that says bans mail-in ballots.
Here's what he's talking about. The original summary said it requires voters to present government-issued ID at the polls or the last 4 digits of a government-issued ID number when voting by mail. The new language says it prohibits voting by mail without a government ID, invalidates mail ballots if the envelope doesn't include the 4 digits of that ID, and prohibits voting in person without a government ID. Changing require to prohibits and invalidates, critics say, changes the meaning.
We're fulfilling our duty. It accurately, fairly, descriptively, informatively.
Oh, just shut up, man. I can't stand this guy. Look, I've got my problems with Nithya Raman, I've got my problems with Karen Bass, I've got my problems with Gavin Newsom. There's just so many California Democrats that I don't like, but that guy, he's at the top of my list. And I almost wish, I don't wish it, but it won't be a totally bad thing, horribly bad thing, if he is able to rig this, if they're able to steal an election that's designed to prevent stolen elections. Then you might say, Rucker, that sounds crazy. Why? It's because then it will be finally proof positive, I think, that if they can defeat an 80-20 issue by lying, by scheming, by rigging it, hopefully that will wake some people up, including me. I need to be woken up. I know I'm stuck out here for personal reasons, but man, I really just want to leave.
It's the smell.
Yesterday, the United Kingdom actually participated, ever so slightly, but still, it was positive movement. They participated in helping the United States in our ongoing war with Iran, and the Iranians weren't too happy about it. We have the story summary over at discernreport.com. Article from the Gateway Pundit. Iran threatens the UK. UK says that it stands ready 24/7 to defend itself. I wish that were true, but I don't think it is. But whatever, doesn't matter. They're not really directly under attack, at least not the islands themselves, not the kingdom. Jordan Conradson reports that Iran has threatened the United Kingdom for allowing U.S. forces to use British bases in ongoing strikes against Iranian targets, prompting London to declare it stands ready around the clock to defend itself. And I'm glad that at least they made this statement. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps warned that any country supporting the United States will be responsible for the consequences and repercussions, while the Iranian former minister labeled the UK an accomplice in the war. An IRG-linked statement claimed American bombing missions against Iran were launched from RAF Fairford 2 days earlier, though the UK Minister of Defense has not confirmed the base's use. The U.S. forces completed a 12th consecutive, and now we're on 13th, consecutive night of attacks on Iranian military sites, with Central Command footage showing Iranian vehicles and boats being destroyed in airstrikes. The UK government spokesperson responded by saying, "Our armed forces are ready to keep the United Kingdom safe from any forms of attack. The UK stands ready 24/7 to defend itself." Again, not a huge deal. They let us use their bases. They're acting all magnanimous about it, but in reality, this is something that should never have been in doubt, in question. Our quote-unquote allies in Europe should have been helping to finish the job long ago. Now, I know President Trump has said that he doesn't need their help, doesn't necessarily want their help, but here's the thing: we can use their help. It's not necessary. It's not like, we're in trouble if Europe doesn't come to our defense. I don't know if those words will ever be spoken by an American, nor will it ever be true. But look, we want this war to end. And so anyone, whether it's any of the Gulf states, our allies in Europe, our allies in Asia, our allies anywhere, we need to step up, because Iran is not just a threat to the United States. It's more of a threat to the Gulf states, which is why they're taking this seriously. More of a threat to Europe, which is why they should be taking it seriously. And as far as the choke point of the Strait of Hormuz, the passage of cargo, and of course oil, well, that really affects pretty much most of the rest of the world, other than, in many ways, the United States. It does affect us indirectly, but still, yeah, this is good news. Glad the UK is sort of, kind of, maybe a little bit joining the fray. We don't need them, but we'll take the help.
And Fredo was...
Are we about to see ground troops in Iran? Something that many of us, probably most of us, don't want to see. Others, there are those that say, you know what, it's going to happen anyway. Let's just get in there, get it done, and get out. It's hard for those who haven't been paying attention to the Middle East for the last few decades. It's hard to get out once you're in. This is the whole reason why Saddam Hussein was even allowed to persist following the first Gulf War, is because they didn't have an occupation exit plan. So the one smart move, I think, that George H.W. Bush made was saying, we better pull out before actually taking out Saddam Hussein. The reason being, of course, that if they went in, if they had to occupy, they might have gotten stuck there for 20 years, as his son eventually found out for the rest of us. Is it going to be the same thing in Iran? I hope not. I trust President Trump, but there are a lot of troops in the Gulf region right now. And the thing that concerns me the most is that we're not hearing a whole lot of saber rattling on our end. If this was just a bluff, I would expect them to be talking about, we can go in anytime, thinking about it, planning on maybe taking over Cargill, and maybe might even just go ahead and take over Tehran. We'll see. We'll see what happens. That's the standard playbook. We're not hearing that. So generally speaking, art of war, more so than art of the deal, if we are going in, you're not going to hear a whole lot about it, not from officials. And that, again, that's the part that concerns me. And then in this clip that's coming up, you'll also hear Marco Rubio explain why we're not talking to them. They want to talk, but why talk to people that constantly lie?
These massive B-1 bombers, of course, carry a huge conventional payload of bombs that can be refueled from the air, and at least some of them are taking off from bases in the United Kingdom. Iran has now threatened the United Kingdom, saying those bases from which the B-1s are taking off are now legitimate targets for Iran. As far as military personnel in the region, CENTCOM now saying there are more than 50,000 U.S. forces in the region, giving President Trump a wide range of options. Wall Street Journal reporting a surge in technical personnel, including 150 medics at Landstuhl Combat Medical Center in Germany. Of course, these medics trained to treat those wounded in combat. As far as U.S. attacks go, another night of attacks against Iranian military positions overnight. That's the 12th night in a row. Of course, the president has warned that civilian infrastructure targets could come under fire if Iran continues to harass commercial shipping in the region. No progress on the diplomatic front, despite the fact that Secretary of State Rubio says Iran is looking for a deal.
This is what he's talking about. Iran is begging us, okay, both directly and indirectly. Let's do a deal. Let's talk. Let's talk. Iran is begging every day. The problem with Iran is every time they make a deal, the people that are in charge there, they either break it or they want to change it.
And finally, after the Houthi terrorist separatists in Yemen claimed to have struck 2 Saudi tankers in the Red Sea, President Trump issuing another warning, saying the Houthis and their leaders in Iran could face tremendous military punishment if they further try to attack tankers in the Red Sea.
Well, spoiler alert, Iran is definitely going to continue to attack tankers in the Red Sea. As long as this regime is in control, that's how they're going to respond. Which is why this next story came to me from Zero Hedge. Tyler Durden, my favorite author's pseudonym, over there says 7 pipeline projects that could break Iran's grip on Hormuz checkpoint. It's a question a lot of us have asked. I know that there's logistics and stuff that prevent such things from happening. But Glenn Beck, yesterday I believe it was, had said, projects like these, projects that could change the game, change the necessity of using the Strait of Hormuz. Those types of projects never work during peacetime. Everybody's always like, it ain't broke. There's no need to fix it. That's a lot of money to spend. That's a lot of effort. Is it really worth it? Is it? But when you're in situations like we're in today, I'm not going to call blessing in disguise or anything like that. But I will say that, hey, at least it seems as if people are starting to take this seriously. Brent crude futures topped $100 a barrel as disruptions at the Strait of Hormuz spread to Bab el-Mandeb in the southern Red Sea. Combined with intensifying Black Sea fighting between Russia and Ukraine, the widening choke point crisis has put the energy complex and broader global commodities market on edge. And this is according to UBS analyst Claudio Martucci, who wrote in a note that the curve on Brent and WTI is getting, again, very steep, backward dated compared to when the diplomatic route to solve the Middle East conflict was on the table and seemed to be making progress. Of course, now it seems as if there is no diplomatic route. Marco Rubio said yesterday that it's not that Iran doesn't want to talk, it's that every time they talk, they talk and talk and talk, they cut a deal, and then they either break the deal or they come back and demand more. They just can't just take a deal as it is. I mean, everybody was saying that last deal, the memorandum of understanding, the complaint wasn't that, oh my gosh, this is a horrible deal. Everybody was saying, no, this is a terrible deal for us. This is great for Iran. They'd be crazy. They'd have to be like just total warmongering, Islamic extremist, prophecy buff crazies to pass on this. $300 billion of free money. Hello? But of course, they are just radical Islamic crazies who believe in the 12th Imam, who think that in order to bring forth their paradise, that they've got to destroy America. Whatever. You can see on the screen the Brent crude futures. It was up, and then back down. Hey, we got the memorandum of understanding. Seems like there's a diplomatic route. We might be able to make this. And then, boom, right back up over $100. The reemergence of choke point chaos in the Strait of Hormuz is now spreading to Bab el-Mandeb, has provided Gulf states with a critical reminder of the risks associated with maritime export routes. This disruption is accelerating efforts to bypass vulnerable choke points and spurring a major infrastructure boom. Again, as Glenn Beck rightly noted, when there's no need, people frown upon the idea of creating more infrastructure. But by golly, all it takes is one disaster, one choke point with drones and missiles raining down on ships to get people to think, maybe we should find an alternate route. At least 7 major pipeline projects are under construction, being planned or under discussion, according to the Associated Press. And you can see, I don't know what this map is telling us, other than there's a lot of lines, a lot of ways to connect. Riveting journalism there, I know. Saudi Arabia's east-west pipeline already provides the region's most important alternative, carrying crude from Abdaik to Yanbu in the Red Sea. Let's go back up to the map. That would be this one right here. Okay? You see that yellow line? From Anbayuk, so in other words, bypassing the Strait of Hormuz, cutting straight over to the Red Sea. I say straight over as if it's short. That's definitely not short, but again, when considering you got a choke point right there at the strait, it sure seems nice to just cut over to the Red Sea and then go down, and then you have to contend with Yemen, but whatever. The UAE has also increased oil shipments to Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman, bypassing Hormuz. Together, the Fujairah route and Saudi Arabia's east-west pipeline had between 3.5 million and 5.5 million barrels a day of spare capacity before the war, according to the EIA. Both pipelines are now operating near capacity because they need to. Even Dubai's state-owned ports and logistics giant DP World is planning to bypass the critical waterway with a new container port on the UAE's east coast in Fujairah. No need to go to the map. You can probably picture that. The UAE has planned to expand Fujairah's export capacity, and more recently, the U.S. is backing talks to revive an oil pipeline from Iraq to Syria's Mediterranean coast. This would create yet another export route that would entirely bypass the Hormuz checkpoint, in turn erode Tehran's leverage over shipping traffic. Yeah, good stuff there from Zero Hedge. Even if, I think even if the peace breaks out tomorrow, they can't stop, they can't slow this down, they can't give up, they can't just wait for the next time Iran goes obtuse. It's going to happen. As long as this regime is in power, it's going to happen. And at this point, I can't imagine there being any form of regime change, not from the United States, not from the people of Iran, because if it was going to happen, you'd think it would have happened already.
It will shock you how much it never happened.
All right, last piece on Iran, and then we'll move on. Yeah, we have time. Last piece on Iran, and then we'll move on. This is a very powerful speech delivered by Senator Tim Sheehy. Now, I'm not a fan of Sheehy's, but I do admire and respect him for his service. I admire and respect him for his sacrifice, and I defer to his opinions when it comes to what it's like to serve in the Middle East, because he has and I have not. So here's his perspective on the war in Iran.
The senator from Montana.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday we saw the President of the United States and many others at Dover Air Force Base presiding over a ceremony that is very sacred to those of us who served, and that is a dignified return of remains from the war zone. And that process happens beginning in the war zone through Dover to the hometown of our fallen heroes. I participated in many of those ceremonies myself, to include carrying friends of mine off the plane. One of those is on this bracelet. He was cut in half by an Iranian EFP. This regime that we are fighting does not care about our partisan politics. They don't care who you voted for, who you pray to, or where you live. They want to kill all of us. And they don't just say it, they actually do it. And they've been doing it for 47 years. This is a war of choice. The Democrats are correct. It's a war of choice that was begun by a radical, lunatic band of terrorists that took over a beautiful nation 47 years ago, took it over with brutality, force, and savagery. And the second they took it over, they didn't free their people. They didn't unleash the largest oil reserves in the world to build schools and bridges. They took it over to murder their own people and to spread their disgusting ideology across the world, and that is exactly what they have been doing. They don't just say it and talk about it. You don't have to believe what they say. You can simply watch what they've done. They have attacked families, women, children, innocent people. They don't just attack them and kill them. They rape them. They skin them alive on camera. They celebrate it. They honor those people who do disgusting things that we would put in jail for the rest of their lives in this country. And they do it for fun, and they pay them money to do it, and they're heroes to that nation. They've done it to friends of mine. They've done it to families who've been in this chamber. And the fact that we sit here and listen to elected officials of this country defend these lunatics who want us all dead. They want all of you dead. They want all of us dead. They don't want us to disappear with the snap of a finger. They want us to be raped, burned alive, and cut into pieces. Watch the video from October 7th. That's what they want to happen from Maine to San Diego, from Seattle to Miami. They want this country turned into a burning husk of its former self. And you don't have to theorize that. That's what they do. From the 1983 barracks bombing, where 280 Marines were vaporized in a morning, from USS Cole to the Achille Laurel to every terrorist attack, from the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. These are not humanitarian freedom organizations. They are death-dealing cults, and they want all of us to die brutal deaths. William Buckley was abducted in 1985, an American military officer. He was skinned alive on camera by the Iranians. American prisoners of war who were captured. They were never called prisoners of war because they were captured by lunatic terrorists, so they were not subject to the Geneva Convention. They were captured and murdered, power drills through their brains. This is in Iraq. These are families that have dealt with this, and they've never gotten a single dime. These families have never gotten restitution, and not a single president has ever stood up to them. Love Donald Trump or hate him, love his policies, hate ICE, love ICE, whatever. There's never been a single president who has stood up to Iran and hit back. For 47 years, our troops and our families have been absorbing attack after attack after attack all over the world. And their radical ideology does not stop at the Persian Gulf. It doesn't stop at Tel Aviv. They want to do this everywhere. It's a global radical ideology. And we've been fighting it for half a century. We didn't start this war. We did not, but we will finish it. And forever wars are not popular with anybody these days. Both sides of that, I love to attack our forever wars. And I can promise you, being someone overseas wearing the uniform, when you're fighting for your country, you don't care what party's in office, but you're fighting to defend your country. And you turn on the news and see your elected officials stabbing you in the back, telling you that you're failing, that you've failed every goal of the war, is what I just heard. Last time I checked, we've wiped these bastards out. An occasional missile strike and boats in the Straits, that's not military strength. Those are the flailings of a failing empire. Those are the flailings of a nation in collapse because they deserve it. So I encourage our colleagues on both sides of the aisle, whatever's politically convenient, whatever plays well on Twitter or Facebook, think about the people who are deployed right now, standing on that wall with a loaded weapon, who have volunteered to defend our country and our way of life. Because they are there defending us in a just war. Because we did not start a war with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They started it with us 47 years ago, and their attacks have gone unanswered for half a century. It's time to fix this problem and make sure another generation of Americans does not have to fight this murderous, savage adversary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is Anthony Fauci finally going to face repercussions? Is Rand Paul finally going to nail him? I doubt it, just because it's the Senate, it's Capitol Hill, it's somebody of power, in this case Anthony Fauci, and that combination yields pretty much never, nothing, ever comes from it, not of actual circumstance. If it's Democrats, they go after, they'll send Bannon to jail, Navarro, they'll send whoever to jail, but we can't get somebody even as evil as Anthony Fauci in jail. But you never know. Hey, it is Rand Paul. This is This is his personal beef, and so maybe we will see something come from this. Just the News, Misty Severi reports that Fauci is set to testify in front of the Senate Homeland Security panel next week. Woohoo! Senate Homeland Security Committee Chairman Rand Paul confirmed Thursday that former National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease Director Anthony Fauci is set to testify in front of his panel next week. Paul subpoenaed the former Biden administration official last month after Fauci declined to do so voluntarily. Go figure. The hearing is expected to take place next Wednesday, July 29th. Set your calendar. Should be fine. I mean, there's going to be fireworks either way. And I know I've said in the past, and I still feel this way, not a big fan of Senate hearings, congressional hearings. It's all just a bunch of people out there trying to get gotcha moments so they can raise funds for the next election. But, yeah, we'll see. Who knows? Again, Rand Paul, personal beef, Fauci, might happen. The panel is expected to question Fauci about whether he lied to Congress during the pandemic, about whether his office had funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. According to an ex-post, Senator Paul said the worst public health decision in history, yet Democrats still praise Anthony Fauci. At next week's hearing, I will make sure Fauci answers for his dangerous decisions and the consequences they had for millions. And I would argue it's not just millions, that it really did directly impact at least tens of millions, possibly hundreds of millions. And you can make the case that because he's the leader in the United States at the time, when it came to COVID, he may have impacted billions of lives. And all for what? To cover up his malfeasance? We shall see. I've given up on ever hoping that there's going to be actual repercussions for a non-conservative, non-Republican. If it's Bannon, he's going to go to jail. If it's Peter Navarro, he's going to go to jail. If it's Anthony Fauci, who did far worse than anybody that we've seen in front of this panel, probably since Hillary Clinton, is anything going to happen to him? I doubt it. But it is the most favorable possible circumstances. Why? Number one, it's Rand Paul. Number two, it's easier to prove that somebody lied in a congressional or a Senate hearing. That is a crime that can be demonstrated more easily. And Senator Paul has released documents that point in that direction. So I'm not going to get hopeful. Not going to get my hopes up. Not going to get your hopes up. But I guess it really possibly could happen. I don't even want to say it. Don't want to jinx it. But we do have, I got a clip here of what we can expect to hear Anthony Fauci saying about himself.
I'm intensively interested in, and I'm really good at it.
All right, we have enough time, so I am going to go ahead and play this clip. I debated whether or not to play it for two reasons. Number one, because I want to give longer commentary. Like I want to talk about this, specifically the what do they call it? The Israeli U.S. Army military merger that's crammed into the NDAA. I have some very clear thoughts about it. I've read it. I've read it again. I've had it analyzed by artificial intelligence. I've listened to the AOCs of the world who are against it, the Tucker Carlsons of the world, Alex Jones. I've also listened to the warmongers, their perspectives on it, and then I've come to my own conclusions. And the funny part is, I would say that almost everybody is getting it wrong. So both have valid points. Okay, now I'm not in the middle on this one, to be clear, but both sides have valid points, right? Let's start with the anti side, the AOCs and Tucker Carlsons and Alex Joneses of the world. They do have a right, and Thomas Massie, very outspoken about it, they do have a right to oppose it. And there are reasons to oppose it. My challenge with them is that they're picking all the wrong reasons. They're picking buzzword reasons. It's like, because this, to be clear, this is not a merger between the militaries. It's not even close. There is literally nothing, no power that's being granted to Israel, the IDF, or anyone else, outside of the United States that doesn't already exist today, which is essentially none. Now, of course, if you're on that side of the spectrum, you probably think that Benjamin Netanyahu is actually controlling President Trump, but whatever. I can't debate you out of that because you're not going to, if you're on that side, you're going to believe it either way no matter what happens. So it is what it is. With that said, that's not the complaint here. The complaint is the executive agent, the nature of the executive agent, and the way that this is being rolled out in a way that doesn't allow for much to change. Don't like that. That's a valid concern. Now, there's a reason why this is the case. Of course, this is about Israel stopping, not accepting aid from the U.S. and instead investing into facilities here in the United States that hires American workers. Their thought is, what's the point of building a plant, building a research facility, building all these things in Georgia when, come next administration, they just wipe it out and it's all gone. And so we invested all this money and all this time and all this effort, and now it just gets shut down. So that's the reason that there's an executive agent. Again, I don't like the way that it's being rolled out. I don't like having it packaged in the NDAA. I understand why, though, and we're seeing why. I would have preferred it to be a standalone. Okay, with that said, and you can make the pitch for it and make the appropriate pitch to the people, take it out of the NDAA, and everything's hunky-dory. It should be hunky-dory, or it's not, and it doesn't pass. But either way, it gets to stand alone and not be the center of attention of this entire NDAA debacle, which, to be clear, I'm against that too. I know I always say, I support President Trump. I do. But really? We need what? How much? I'm all in favor of building back our war prowess, our war fighting capabilities, our extreme superiority over all of our enemies, especially China. But it's a lot of money for a nation that is as much in debt as we are, with 40 trillion debt. Wow, hard to justify that one, guys. But whatever. Not gonna dwell on that. Now on the other side, they're getting it wrong too. They're like, this is nothing. This is, we have these types of relationships with our other allies, and the Five Eyes. We already share intelligence, and we're already sharing a lot of technology with Israel and vice versa. I don't see what the problem is. All this is to solidify the relationship and whatever. That's not quite true either. Okay, and they're not making the right case here. So, and neither side has to make the right case, because neither side can budge the other side, because it's stuck in the NDAA. Those who are the AOCs of the world can rail against it. Giving away our sovereignty and our democracy, and then, of course, the other side can say, this is nothing, no big deal, nothing burger, nothing to see here. It's just one little line amongst thousands of pages. It's it's not one line, it's about 3 pages, but whatever. They can say whatever they want about it that way. Both are wrong, as President Trump would say. And so I was going to play. Do I have time? I guess I do. I'm going to go ahead and I'll do it. I'll go ahead and play Glenn Beck's perspective, which is almost, and I want to be clear about something. This is how I felt. It's because you're going to listen and be like, he's just echoing a lot of what Glenn Beck said. It's true, but I assure you, I formed my opinions before. I just happened to listen to Glenn just now and realize, he's the only other guy out there pretty much that's saying, same things I'm saying.
Okay, they passed the defense bill yesterday in the House. The fight was all about Section 219, okay? 1,500 words in a bill of hundreds of thousands of words. And it creates something called the United States Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. One thing Washington is not good at is naming stuff. Anyway, it orders the secretary to designate one official, an executive agent inside the Pentagon, whose job is to coordinate and accelerate joint research, testing, and industrial cooperation with Israel. Counter-drone, this is missile and air defense, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, directed energy, cyber, biotechnology, and and to also identify Israeli origin technology that could be moved into American weapons programs and promote joint ventures, joint licensing, and American-based production with Israeli firms. Now, AOC was like, oh my gosh, the Jews! It's an existential threat to our sovereignty and our democracy. It's going to merge parts of our military with the IDF. Jews, 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 they're drinking the blood of little Christian children. Oh. Now, Mike Lawler answered with, we do this all the time with other nations. I don't know. Maybe you should stop hating Jews so much? Now, Thomas Massey, a Republican of Kentucky, said, we shouldn't merge our military tech and supply chain with Israel's. We're not. Ro Khanna, the Democrat from California, said the same thing from the other end of the spectrum. Marjorie Taylor Greene said a roll call would produce a list of names of members who committed treason and sold out to a foreign country. Committing treason. Wow. All right, so without any hyperbole or anything else, let me just specifically tell you what the text actually says and what it actually does. Section 219 does not merge the two militaries. I would never be for that. It doesn't create a joint command. I would never be for that. It doesn't put an American soldier under an Israeli officer. I would never be for that. It doesn't give anyone in Jerusalem a vote on where our carriers go. I wouldn't be for it. Read the section. None of that is there. Anyone telling you that American troops are being handed over is either wrong or counting on you just to be a nincompoop. Okay? It's not there. The cooperation that is there is not new. Iron Dome, Arrow, David Sling, counter-drone work, anti-tunnel technology. We've been building these things together for 40 years, and Americans are alive today because of it. Here is what is new, not the cooperation, the officer. This is the one thing that's new. I want you to think of the Pentagon as an enormous airport, okay? And every piece of technology on Earth that wants to get into Americans' weapon systems has to go through the same terminal. They have to get evaluated, get tested. They have to compete for a contract. They have to get bought. It is slow and it is miserable, and it is slow and miserable for everyone on purpose, because that's what keeps the taxpayer from getting fleeced and the soldier from getting a rifle that jams all the time. Section 219 does not change where the line ends. However, it does build one country a dedicated lane, and then it hires a full-time employee of the United States whose entire job description is keeping that lane moving. Okay, that's what this executive agent is. It's not a treaty. It's not a committee, not a program. It's not a general from Israel looking over. Nothing. It's a person, an American with a title, an office, a staff, and a budget, and a performance review. What shows up on that performance review is really important. It's how much has gone through that lane this year. That's not corruption. I'm not alleging any. It's not corruption. It's arithmetic. You get what you measure, and we've decided to measure this. Why? Why don't we have that officer for Great Britain? We don't have it for Australia. We don't have it for Japan. We don't have it for Canada or any of the other Five Eyes. Why? It's the one thing the defenders of this section never actually answer. And you know why? Because they're spending their time knocking down the merger claim that AOC handed them for free. Let's say you hire the best contractor in the world. They're going to build your kitchen. Does beautiful work. When he's finished, he leaves, and the kitchen's yours. Next year, you can hire somebody else. That's cooperation. Now, say instead you let him run his own plumbing through your walls in his fittings to his standards. The kitchen still works. It may even work even better, But you've just made a decision about every remodel you'll ever do in that house because now the walls have to be opened around his pipe. And the only man who stocks that fitting is him. That's what supply chain means in this fight. It's not about who you buy from. It's about what you can no longer stop buying.
Arguably the most annoying member of Congress is Shri Thanadar. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. He is just annoying. But to his credit, he did acknowledge, to Allison Steinberg from Lindell TV, he did acknowledge that only citizens should vote, which I guess is saying a lot, considering that you can't get most Democrats to even admit that.
Hi, Congressman.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Just curious to get your thoughts on this latest development in New Jersey, where the governor has revealed that there are thousands of aliens actually registered to vote in the state, and 400 of them actually did vote. Democrats have long said illegals never vote in American elections. Obviously, that's not true. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, only American citizens should vote in elections. And if there is a problem with registration, whether it is a software glitch or whatever that is, that needs to be fixed. But no, only citizens should vote. Anyone that is a non-citizen must not be able to vote in our elections.
But they did. So what should happen now? I mean,
Well,
we've
that
always
needs to
heard
be- it
that
needs- it needs-
2020 was the most secure election of all time. I mean, can we trust that now? Should the American people really trust that?
Look, we need to investigate if that is what happened, and that needs to be resolved. But it should never happen.
And wouldn't this be the perfect argument to get the Save America Act passed? I mean, Save America Act, if it were implemented, it would have stopped all of this from happening. Does that change your stance at all?
Well, no, this is an isolated incident. It was, I want to know what went wrong. That needs to be fixed. But Save Act is not the answer.
Why is it not the answer?
Because it suppresses voting by minorities. It suppresses voting by women. It makes it harder for people of low means, poor people, to get the documentation that they need. So every American citizen should feel free to vote and be able to vote without restrictions.
But the average American has documentation. They have ID, proof of citizenship. It's not that hard to get. I mean, these are standard documents most people have. So is it really suppressing?
Well, look, a passport costs $160. And most Americans with this affordability crisis don't have $160 sitting around to pay for a passport. Some people don't have their birth certificate. Some women have changed their names after getting married. And it makes it all harder. And I think we have a system that works. Yes, it's not perfect. There are some instances of failure and errors, and those all need to be fixed.
So is that why you voted against the Stop Insider Trading stock ban?
That was not just it was a very complicated bill. It had much more things. I'm against inside trading, but that bill was not about that alone. Thanks.
Thank you, Congressman.